Our first story comes out of Indonesia, where a new giant tree species has been discovered. Lophopetalum tanagambut is a large top canopy tree growing to 40 meters tall, with a trunk diameter at breast height or chest height of up to 1.05 meters. So this is a massive tree that they just discovered, a tree species. The newly identified tree species belongs to the genus Lophopetalum in the cosmopolitan family Calastraceae. This genus includes almost 20 currently recognized species native to India, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Cambodia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, Nepal, New Guinea, Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam, Australia, and the Andaman Islands. Within the Calastraceae family, Calastraceae, I don't know how you pronounce that. Within the Calastraceae family, the tribe Lophopetali includes 3 paleotropical genera with winged seeds that lack an aril: Cocuna, Lophopetalum, and Parapterygia, said National University of Singapore's Environmental Research Institute researcher Augusti Randy and colleagues. Now the rest of this article, this is a pretty interesting article about this new species they discovered, but the rest of it is not so much them like talking about their discovery and like the work around it and what it means, so much as it is them describing the actual physiological details of the tree itself. So we can get into it, but there's some technical terms here. But it's still, nonetheless, it's still a really interesting description of this new tree. It is, as you can see from the picture here, a bit weird, and we'll talk about these strange folded roots. They have a comment about that too. Okay. So the researchers they explain, the largest genus is Lophopetalum, with 19 species defined by the inner surface of the petals with various appendages, hence the generic name from the Greek for crest, or lopho, as well as the 5 myrrhous bisexual flowers with stamens inserted on the disc, a 3 locular ovary, and 3 angular capsular fruits with the wings surrounding the seed. The genus is closely related to the Cocuna, with which it shares the 3 angular fruit and winged seeds, but Cocuna has the seeds attached at the base and an apical wing. So here they're just talking about seed physiology and how it compares to other known relatives of this species. Lophopetalum, the genus, extends from India through to northern Australia, but species diversity is centered on western Malaysia, and 7 of the 19 accepted species have been reported from the Indonesian island of Sumatra, but all of them range extensions from species described from material from Borneo, India, and peninsular Malaysia. Okay, so I'm not exactly sure what they're trying to say with this sentence here. It's not exactly grammatically correct, unless I'm misunderstanding it. But what I think they're trying to say is that you have 7 of these 19 accepted species in the Lophopetalum genus. They've been reported on the island of Sumatra. But I think what they're trying to say here is that material from some of these plants, like perhaps leaves or seeds or bark or something like that, have been found elsewhere, outside of Sumatra, like Borneo, India, and the Malaysian peninsula. I think that's what they're saying. Anyway, continuing, the authors write, Lophopetalum tanagambut, this new species, is only known from peat swamp forests of the Indonesian island of Sumatra. Peat swamp forests are known for their unique, nutrient-poor, carbon-rich, and wet conditions, which require specific adaptations to survive in, the researchers explained. These habitats, however, remain poorly studied and have undergone extensive conversion to agriculture, with only 11% of undisturbed swamp forest remaining, and with other areas degraded and still undergoing conversion to agriculture. So this is a really interesting point they bring up, is that the habitats where this previously unknown tree species lives, these habitats are at massive risk of being destroyed, developed and altered by human activity. We drain the swamps, we alter, clear cut the forests, rebuild it, level it out, and all the species that live there, plants and animals alike, are wiped out or they're driven out. And this is a terrible thing, especially when there's still species that we can discover, still giant trees that we can discover. Lophopetalum tenegambut grows up to 40 meters tall and has a diameter at breast height of up to 1.05 meters. So this is a really big tree, too. Its knee roots system, so those folded roots that you saw poking up in like a ring around the trunk, those are called knee roots. They bend like your knees do. Kind of neat. Kind of a cool little name there. The knee root system is wide, up to 15 meters around the tree, and raised up to 1.5 meters high from the ground surface. So that's wild. That means some of these knee roots poking up and then folding back down are as tall as a grown adult. Like 1.5 meters, that's like, I think the average height of like a grown woman. Continuing, the authors say, its bark is smooth, cracked longitudinally to flaky, light to dull gray or milky white. The inner bark is pinkish orange to pale reddish brown, a sapwood cream. The species is the only known Lophopetalum tree with 3 to 4 leaves in a pseudoverticillate arrangement, the scientists noted. Lophopetalum tenegambut was observed flowering during February to April and fruiting in April to June. We observed many trees in various life stages, seedling, sapling, pole to large tree, in the wild, and the pseudoverticillate leaves are consistent, the authors said. Opposite or subopposite leaves are usually found in the genus, but does not occur in this new species. On older branches, we sometimes found opposite leaves, but usually there's also a leaf scar slightly below them, indicating they're not oppositely arranged from the beginning, but shift in position as the branchlets mature. If a twig is 3 to 4 angular, I think that's a technical term describing the plant physiology. I'm not quite sure. But just to read the quote as it's written, if a twig is 3 to 4 angular, depends on the number of leaves at a node, and this is clearly visible when the twigs are still young. Like I said, that seems like a technical description, and I'm not quite sure what they're trying to say here. What the 3 to 4 angular is, or yeah. The researchers recommend that the new species should be categorized as critically endangered. Lophopetalum tenegambut grows in relatively undisturbed lowland peat swamp forest, which is protected by voluntary commitment of the concession as a conservation and retirement area, they said. More extensive collecting in the wider area may reveal otherwise, but for now, we must assume a small population size and a restricted distribution in Sumatra. So they're playing it safe. They're saying, look, we found this tree. As far as we know, this is the only place it exists, and because we just discovered it, it's probably reasonable to think that it's a small population size in this very local, restricted habitat. So we got to be careful with this. We got to protect it, and not absent-mindedly or negligently destroy it because we want to make a palm oil plantation or a parking lot or something like that. While overall, undisturbed peat swamp forests have declined and are under threat across Southeast Asia, and most remaining peatlands are converted to agriculture or degraded due to drainage. So this is, they're just reiterating that point about human impact and how it's just really destructive, and we could lose a lot of these species that we haven't even discovered yet if we're just so destructive and negligent about how we treat nature. Who knows? This tree, it's just discovered. It's never been under chemical analysis before. What if it turns out that there's some really potent anti-cancer compound in the leaves? Or there's some metabolite in the roots that has, really beneficial immunological property. So perhaps it could help, people with compromised immune systems. Use your imagination. There's almost anything could be going on in the chemistry of this tree. And if it's a small population in a restricted area that's under threat, if it's critically endangered, whatever this biochemical novelty is, whatever medicinal or industrial or even food value we could get out of it, will be lost if a species like this is accidentally wiped out before it's even discovered or studied. And that's why it's so important to send people out into the deep jungle to explore areas that have largely been unexplored for centuries or millennia, because there's still all this stuff out there to discover. There's still animals and giant trees and all sorts of stuff to discover and study and to derive useful compounds from. And really, not to harp on this too much, but The authors are really reiterating this conservation ecological protection point, and I think that's super important. This is an example of why biodiversity is inherently valuable. You want to discover new species and preserve these species, because if you study them, analyze their chemical composition and their genes and stuff, every single species could be a cornucopia of new medicines, of new industrial compounds, of new anything, This is the objective value of biodiversity. And studies and news articles like this really just drive that point home. Now, we could take a look at the study that was published in the journal Phytotaxa, but there's not a whole lot here. It's kind of just reiterating what they explained in the article. The abstract just says, we discovered a new tree species, and we're going to describe these various attributes. But yeah, besides that, there's not a whole lot. And here it looks like is a picture of the winged seed, I believe. Although it's locked, I don't have access to it. I can't see a description of the figure. Real bummer. But yeah, cool stuff. Cool new tree discovery, emphasizing the value of biodiversity and conservation. Really cool stuff. Love stories like this.